achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And unlike traditional shows, we are not going to be doing a pre-fight ramble, if you will, as we are doing a special double edition of Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. We'll be breaking down first the upcoming Ultimate Fighter 26 finale, which will crown a new UFC flyweight champion, women's flyweight champion. And then we're moving on to the pay-per-view UFC 218, the first event taking place December 1st, which is the Friday, the second event going down on the 2nd of December, which is the Saturday night. I'll be giving you main card predictions for 4 fights for the Ultimate Fighter finale, at least, or 3 fights, sorry, at least that's the ones that are posted. All of my prelims will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, along with any main card fights I don't cover. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions for UFC 218, I believe, yeah, UFC 218, all the prelims as per usual available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I don't have the wherewithal to wait for the entire finale card to be posted. So before you start asking, well, what about the main event? What about this fight? What about this fight? If it's not in the video, go check it out at kamikazeoverdrive.net. It will be posted in the prelims section. My bet packs, again, I've been winning. I've had a couple fights here or there that just prevented me from winning massively. I won massively a couple shows ago, but we're knocking on the door another big card, so we're breaking even, and I think we're going to smash it this week. I'm very much looking forward to it this weekend. You can pick up the bet packs for $15. I'm not sure what it'll be, but usually it's saved between $30 and $35 if you subscribe. On that note, we've got lots to get to, so let's get to that first main card prediction. Considering there are more fights than normal on this episode of my show, I'll be breaking down fights a little bit quicker, at least the first set of fights anyway. We opened the Ultimate Fighter finale fight card in the UFC's middleweight divisions. Andrew El Dirte Sanchez, with a record of 10 wins and 3 losses, takes on Canada's own Ryan James. Now, Sanchez is coming off a tough loss to Anthony Smith. It was an upset, a fight he was probably ahead on, or at least in good position going in before he got knocked out. It's his first defeat in the UFC, his second loss by knockout in his career. For James, he took a debut win over Keith Barish, but has lost fights to Gerald Meerschaert and Marshman as well, back-to-back bouts. Physically, James' 2-inch reach advantage. He's 2 inches taller, and Sanchez, though, is the younger fighter by 7 years. Now, for the most part, both fighters are ground-based competitors. At least that's their forte. Sanchez is a wrestler. He's landed 10 takedowns over his 3 UFC wins. Actually, he didn't land any in the Trevor Smith fight. So he landed 10 takedowns over his 2 UFC victories. So showing how heavily he leans on his ground game. James is a grappler. He's a BJJ black belt. He has 7 wins by submission. He has lost the takedown battle 2-1 though over 3 appearances, so certainly not a high-level wrestler. That's kind of been the knock on him for his career. If you look at how these two pair up, Sanchez is certainly the more likely to score takedowns, find success on the floor. Ryan James was submitted by Meerschaert back in his most recent, second last defeat. If forced to compete in the feet, the Canadian's a very simple striker. He puts up decent volume, though. He's not afraid to move forward and attack. He doesn't have a lot of power, and he tends to be a little bit hittable as a result of his willingness to push forward. I would think Sanchez will find some success with his wrestling here. Can he hurt James in the feet? I don't know about that. His striking is still a work in progress. It's certainly getting better. Most of his takedowns come along the cage. I think he'll have some success with his strikes, close the distance, grind him out along the cage, look to take him to the mat when the opportunity strikes him. Sanchez has outworked all 3 of his opponents with a combination of takedowns and volume. Just the Anthony Smith fight certainly just didn't go his way in the end. So my prediction here is Andrew Sanchez to defeat Ryan James by decision. Our next fight is a UFC bantamweight bout, which should be a fairly interesting matchup, as Joe Soto, 18 wins and 5 losses, takes on the pikey undefeated Brett Johns, currently holding a record of 14 wins and no defeats. He's 2-0 in the UFC with a couple of solid victories over, low-level guys. Soto, though, he started with a title shot in the UFC, started right at the top. He lost 3 in a row, including that opportunity against TJ Dillashaw, but he's now won 3 in a row, including 2 wins by submission and an upset victory over very highly touted Hani Yahya. Physically, John's 1 inch taller. He'll have a 6-inch reach advantage, and he is the younger man by 5 years. Now, Soto's a veteran fighter. He's well-rounded. He's decent on the feet. He throws with some decent pop. He's scrappy as hell. He's a very sound grappler, very capable of, a good scrambler, good, always a submission threat. He just keeps working and pushing you and forcing you to work hard as well. And he just likes to get dirty. We saw in that last fight, he got a nasty cut from a headbutt, and he just kept coming forward. Johns, though, is also very well-rounded. He's got some decent pop in his hands. He works some good volume, and he's landed 14 combined takedowns in his 2 UFC fights, so it shows he knows how to take fights to the mat and work that top position. He relies heavily on his wrestling. He's got, solid, top position game. He really controls the action. He needs to be careful in this fight, though, when he sticks his head in on takedown attempts, because Soto's got a nasty guillotine that he certainly is not afraid to go for. He's going for chokes against Yaya. He's going to go for chokes here against Brett Johns. No hesitation. If Johns gets on top, he has good top position, but he's also very good at holding. Sorry, he has good ground and pound, but he's very good at holding top position. He will threaten with submissions. The big question is, how does he do against the scrambling offense of Soto when Joe attacks off his back? Can Johns defend and maintain top position, or does he have to bail out and give up the spot? That's going to be a big factor in this fight. When you go back to Soto's upset win over Beal, he had a lot of trouble with the technical, more composed striking attack of Beal. Until Beal slowed down, Soto was really struggling. I don't think Johns is going to slow down. Johns is pretty consistent with his offensive output. I think Joe is way too willing to shell up and wait out damage, let his opponent hit him, and his chin's a little bit of a question mark. He's been knocked out before, he's been rocked before, and I think, I'm not saying Johns is going to take him out, but I'm saying he certainly could do some damage, could hurt him. I think John finds some success with his takedowns, but he might have to wait till later in the fight if he does some damage on the feet, maybe hurt Soto, wear him down before he opts to take it to the ground. Either way, I think Johns is just more busy, more impactful with his offense, and my prediction is Brett Johns to defeat Joe Soto by decision. Moving right along, we have a very interesting matchup in the UFC's middleweight division as Eric Spicely, 10 wins and 3 losses, takes on Gerald GM3 Meerschaert with a record of 26 wins and 9 defeats. Now, Meerschaert's coming off a tough TKO loss to Thiago Santos. He had won back-to-back fights and got off to a pretty good start in his UFC run. Spicely, though, submitted Thiago Santos, interestingly enough, so that means Eric Spicely's going to win this fight, MMA math at least. But he's coming off a loss to Antonio Carlos Jr., and where he was submitted by just a superior ground fighter. Both men are 6'1". Meerschaert will have a 4-inch reach advantage, and he is a year younger than Spicely. Now, just like in the last fight, both fighters do, or 2 fights ago, both fighters do their best work predominantly on the mat. Spicely's a BJJ black belt. 7 of his 11 wins have come by submission, including 2 UFC finishes. For Meerschaert, he's a brown belt. He has submission wins over both Janes, who is fighting in the card as well, and Joe Gigliotti. And he has 19 career submissions, accounting for a large portion of his 26 victories. Now, it's worth noting Meerschaert has been submitted 7 times in his career, but nothing since 2013. It happened much earlier. He seems to have tightened things up and gone on a run, which got him to the octagon. Spicely's been submitted twice, and they both happened in the UFC, so his submission issues have come later on. But again, the guys that tapped him out, especially Antonio Carlos Jr., no issue with that. Getting tapped out by Sam Alvey, Alvey's a very talented grappler, a very good fighter, but he's not known for his jiu-jitsu, at least. Now, looking at their numbers as far as takedowns are concerned, Meerschaert landed 3 takedowns in his loss to Thiago Santos, but he gave up 1 in each of his last 2 fights. He's an excellent scrambler. So he's one of those guys, if you're going to try and take him down, he invites that, and he'll try and work to a better position and get himself on top or in a position to set up a submission, and that's how it works for his offense. Now, for Spicely, he's landed a takedown in each of his last 3 fights. He held his own against ACJ. Eventually got submitted, but he certainly had a few moments here and there and made it a decent scrap on the ground. Now, with both guys being capable ground fighters and very good, submission fighters capable of putting takedowns up, we could very well see this fight contested on the feet as both guys opt to, take the fight where their opponent isn't the strongest and see how that fares. Spicely isn't an overwhelming striker as far as technique or volume or power is concerned. Well, Meerschaert, he's a little more nasty. He's got a little bit more of a, I like his striking a little better. He works more aggressive. He's got a little more pop in his hands. And I think I give him the edge on the feet, certainly. I think I give him a little bit of an edge on the ground. I think he's a better wrestler, and I think he's got the jiu-jitsu and scrambling skills to get the better of Eric Spicely. It'll be close, but ultimately I would not be shocked to see this fight completely contested on the feet. And I think that's where Meerschaert is simply going to be busier, more active, and more impactful. And my prediction is Gerald Meerschaert to defeat Eric Spicely. I'll take Meerschaert by decision, even though it could end by submission if he hurts him. I'll take it by decision. We now move over to the UFC 218 pay-per-view, which will take place on December 2nd, and kicking off our 5-fight main card is a very interesting matchup in the women's strawweight division. Is the number 5 ranked Tecia, the Tiny Tornado Torres, alliteration at its finest, 9 wins and 1 loss, takes on the 6th ranked Karate Hottie Michelle Waterson, currently holding a record of 14 wins and 5 defeats. Now, Waterson's coming off a submission loss to Rose Namajunas, who is now the champion. Rose scooped up all of Waterson's momentum. A lot of people talk about Waterson getting a shot at the title. Rose scooped up all of her momentum, got that title shot, and won the championship. Waterson started 2-0, lost that fight. She needs to rebuild some of her momentum here. For Torres, she is 5-1 in the UFC. Her only career loss also coming against Rose Namajunas. She has won back-to-back fights since dropping that bout. She has 5 wins over fighters, though, that are combined 7-16 in the UFC. So it's just worth noting that, her loss to Rose aside, she hasn't faced and defeated at least world beaters inside the octagon. But she's beat everybody she should, which is important. Waterson, 2 inches taller, she'll have a 2-inch reach advantage. Torres is the younger fighter by 3 years. Now, looking at Tecia first, she's coming off her first career finish in any fashion, whether it be Ultimate Fighter, whether it be exhibition bouts, obviously professional bouts. She submitted Lima in her last bout. She had 8 decision wins as a pro prior to that submission victory. She's a black belt in karate and taekwondo, a BJJ blue belt overall. And when you look at her entire body of fight work, her key to success has been her volume. She has a very good activity rate, 4.48 strikes landed per minute compared to 2.25 strikes absorbed per minute. She keeps very busy with her offense. She's very good at pressuring and cutting off the cage, moving forward. She throws fakes and feints, and she's very good at cutting off the cage. And against Juliana Lima, she routinely was able to get inside Lima's reach. It's something she'll have to do here. Get inside her reach of those fakes and feints and land her strikes. She does come from a kickboxing background. She'll throw a lot of kicks, again, taekwondo as well. She can work from the clinch. I love the way against Lima she was framing the knees, kind of turning Lima's body out and then turning that knee over right into her midsection. She can be taken down, and that's certainly a concern. Randa Marcos on the show took her down when she defeated her in the Ultimate Fighter. Rose took her down a couple of times when she defeated her in the UFC. But again, against Lima went for a takedown, and we saw Torres very beautifully counter that takedown attempt, grab her neck, set up the rear naked choke for the tap, tap, tap. Now, Waterson, she's a Jackson-trained fighter. She's a black belt in karate. Obviously, her name indicates she has that background. She can work from range, but she's exceptionally strong in the clinch as well. I love the way she switches stances. She has that league leg front kick. She'll also come with a right hook behind it, which is kind of a boom-boom technique. A lot of people aren't going to be anticipating a second shot after throwing that lead leg strike. She'll attack the head, the body with kicks. She'll go to the oblique, throw an oblique kick as well. She throws a nice left jab, right hook combination. When we saw her against Paige Van Zandt, she was using that side kick to maintain distance because we know Paige wants to close the distance. We could see something similar against Tecia, especially if Michelle looks to try and utilize that reach and keep her on the outside. Once they do close that distance, Michelle's got excellent throws, but she needs a little bit of separation. She's had some issues with fighters really clamp down on her in the clinch. Michelle needs to be able to get her arms extended, but once she gets that head and arm throw, look out, you're going for a ride. Now, at the same time, that's a very risky technique. We see it a lot in women's MMA. They go for that technique, and it's kind of an all or nothing. Either you hit it and you end up in a good position, or you don't hit it just right and you wind up with your opponent getting your back and you are in significant trouble. And we did see Waterson have some issues against Angela Magana. She did scramble her way out of it, but it's one of those things where, again, if you mess up, it doesn't matter who you're facing, you're in serious trouble. There have been times we've seen Waterson pushed up against the cage and kind of get stuck there, had a couple of issues. When she fought Paige Van Zandt, she did a nice job of countering that, takedown into a rear naked choke. The same thing, the kind of flip situation, she got countered by Rose and got submitted in that fight. I know the stats are over a smaller sample size, but Torres averages almost 2 significant strikes more per minute than Michelle Waterson does. She's simply more active. I think Waterson lacks the output to match Torres. I think Tecia has vastly superior cardio, and that's something that's going to show up in the second half of round 2 and certainly in round 3. But I think even if with the cardio aside, Tecia just works more and she knows how to deal with a reach disadvantage. Look for Waterson to attempt some of those suicide throws or at least dangerous throws, and I think Torres is going to counter those into better spots, use that very strong base she has, capitalize on the mistakes Michelle makes, be the more active fighter, and my prediction is Tecia Torres to defeat Michelle Waterson by decision. And I know you guys are thinking another decision outcome is what you just predicted. Well, we're going to switch that in a hurry here as we move to the UFC's lightweight division and a battle for the ages. The former UFC lightweight champion, the number 4 ranked Eddie, the Underground King Alvarez, currently holding a record of 28 wins, 5 losses, and 1 no contest. He's taking on the 5th ranked fighter in the division, the former WSOF lightweight champion. Eddie, also the former Bellator champion, worth noting. The number 5 ranked, though, former WSOF champion Justin the Highlight Gaethje, undefeated at 18-0. Now, what we have here is the former UFC champion, former Bellator champion, taking on the former WSOF champion. And the winner of this matchup certainly could be in line for a shot at the lightweight title whenever that situation gets itself straightened out. God, that's a bloody mess. Now, Gaethje is coming off a successful debut against Michael Johnson. That fight cost me a shit ton of money. I needed that matchup. I needed Johnson to win that fight for a ton of money, and he came close, but ultimately got finished. It was a back-and-forth war. When you go back a little bit before that, he defended his World Series of Fighting title 6 times, not including a win over Melvin Gillard, which Gillard came in overweight, unfortunately. Gaethje put on a hell of a performance in WSOF and in his debut. And now Eddie Alvarez, he lost his debut, but then rallied to beat former Strikeforce and WEC champions. When you look at Anthony Pettis and Eddie Alvarez, he won the UFC title over Rafael dos Anjos, and then of course lost to Conor McGregor, and the no contest against Dustin Poirier. So he's, kind of hit a bit of a skid again. For Gaethje, he's 2 inches taller, 2-inch reach advantage. He is the younger fighter by 4 years. Now, Alvarez, he didn't lose his first post-title fight matchup, but it was close. He was in trouble, ultimately the no contest, the illegal knees, but it was one of those fights where it was like things were not going well for him for a long time. On the flip side, Gaethje, one of the situations he's kind of avoided is many champions coming in from other organizations, and I'm looking at Will Brooks, Hector Lombard, Eddie Alvarez himself, even Marlon Moraes, who came over from WSOF, lost their debut and got off to rocky starts. Some recovered. Alvarez went on to win the title. Moraes has got a victory since. Gaethje won his debut, so he's got off to a good start. He's got his footing. We'll see if he can keep it rolling from here. Now, Gaethje is an exceptionally exciting fighter, but he's very reckless. He's tough. He can take a lot of damage. He's aggressive. He will exchange, but he gets hit a lot. He carries a crazy pace. He gets hurt. As I said, he survives, and he wears opponents out because of it. He took Michael Johnson's best shots, and Johnson was having a lot of success early on, but you could just see his general demeanor start to drop off simply because, he was taking the best shots Johnson had to offer, and Johnson wasn't getting anywhere, and the fights were turning against him. Johnson, and it wasn't good. You could see him wearing himself out, not hurting him, doing his best, but not accomplishing his goals. Gaethje will get tired. He will slow down, but he's still moving forward. He's still throwing impactful strikes. He's still dangerous. He was hurt by MJ a couple times in that fight. Again, he took a lot of damage. He's tough and durable. He was hit a lot. He swings wildly a little bit. I don't like the way he shells up. But at the same time, it works for him. He throws a very hard uppercut. He landed a couple of them against Johnson. He does a nice left jab. He'll work knees in the clinch, both the body and the head. He'll throw just violent flurries in close. He's got some nice low kicks, which again is one of those things. It's like, hey, you're going to cover up top. I'm going to smash it down low. I do like when he does shell up. I do like this. When he shells up, he will fire these hooks around the outside that can be absolutely devastating. And if he catches you with one, you are in some serious, serious trouble. He has a wrestling background. He will go to takedowns when needed. He's got a good sprawl defensively. And once he gets on top, he's got some pretty good ground and pound. Now, Eddie Alvarez, we know all about him. He's got good boxing, good footwork overall. His head movement is solid. We saw that in the Dustin Poirier fight, at least early on. He works in and out. He closes the distance and can crack, and then he slips back out. But at the same time, he gets hurt. He gets hurt a lot in fights. He tends to recover. He didn't recover in the Conor McGregor fight. He did recover in the Poirier matchup. He was hurt. He was in a lot of trouble. And then he came back, mounted a comeback, and had Poirier in some trouble as well. He throws a nice leaping left hook. He'll throw a jab to the body. He throws a nice hard right hook as well. I like the way he uses that left to set up the right hand. It's a nice combination 1-2 that he'll throw. Again, he throws some nice hard leg kicks as well. And when he fought Donald Cerrone, you go back to that matchup way back in I think it was his debut. He did a lot of damage with some short range strikes on the inside from the clinch. That's something he could look to do here against Gaethje and kind of limit maybe Gaethje's ability to wind up. When he took out Rafael dos Anjos, again, it was a close range strike that eventually put him on, wobbled him and put him in some serious trouble. Now, one thing with Eddie Alvarez that he might not be able to go to here is he has used his wrestling very effectively. When he upset Gilbert Melendez and he upset Anthony Pettis, fights I both correctly predicted, he used 9 completions, takedowns in over those 2 fights. And it was one of those things where he was able to, things weren't going 100% his way on the feet. Let's change gears, and he had a lot of success. He works his takedowns along the cage. He gets his head in, close, clasps his hands, and really can drag his opponent to the mat. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that here. One thing I don't like going back to the striking, he leans very heavy on his lead leg, and that's something I think Gaethje's going to target and try and take away from him. We saw Gilbert Melendez stun him with a right hand. He was stopped by McGregor. Poirier hurt him. He survived, but he was in very rough shape. Again, he's a guy who takes damage. Gaethje takes damage, and it simply could come down to who holds up better. Alvarez can be drawn into a brawl, even though he should remain technical. He has the power to do some damage. Does he have the durability? I don't think he does. Gaethje wants to brawl. He wants to slug it out. As I said, he's willing to take damage. It's not a good long-term plan for a career, but it certainly works in the short term. Working for him. It's going to come crashing down all at once. Again, it could be this fight. I think Gaethje is simply more durable. Eddie needs to fight smart. He's not going to. He won't find success with his wrestling either in this matchup. And my prediction is Justin Gaethje to defeat Eddie Alvarez by TKO. Moving now to the UFC's flyweight division, it's the number 2 ranked Henry the Messenger Cejudo, former title challenger, 11 wins and 2 losses, taking on the 4th ranked Sergio Pettis with a current record of 16 wins and 2 losses. And this is a fight that was actually supposed to happen a little while ago, and it actually the fight, I posted my prediction, and the fight got yanked before it actually transpired. Looking at Sergio Pettis, my apologies. He's 4-1 since moving to the UFC's flyweight division. He lost his divisional debut to Ryan Benoit by upset knockout, even though he was looking very good. He has progressively looked better in each matchup. This is a big opponent now for him and a big opportunity. A lot of people think he could be next in line for a title shot if he can win this fight. For Cejudo, he had lost back-to-back bouts coming into this match when it was originally supposed to happen, obviously getting knocked out by Demetrius Johnson, losing a very close split decision against Joseph Benavidez in a fight where he lost a point. He kind of went through that post-title fight letdown, but he's coming off an exceptional performance where he knocked out another former title challenger in Wilson Hayes, KO'd him in the second round, and looked as good as he's looked at any point in the UFC. Now, Cejudo has had some issues with weight. He seems to have got it under control. Pettis, formerly 135-pounder as well, said it was difficult to make 125. So these are two guys that, wouldn't be shocking to see one or both miss weight. It'd be very unfortunate. Pettis, 2 inches taller, of a 5-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger fighter by 6 years. So physically, everything going for Sergio in this fight. Now, looking at Pettis first, he switches stances, he slips his head off center, and he throws good combinations. He's a very talented striker, averaging 3.84 strikes landed per minute. He throws a very fast right jab, limited to no windup when he throws most of his striking. He follows with a left hook. His confidence, you can see how confident he's becoming in his striking. He throws a nice inside leg kick, and he will go high as well. The thing I like, he's very smooth with his striking, and he mixes it up and keeps you guessing. He's not repetitive whatsoever with his offense. When he fought John Moraga, he hurt him with a counter left hook, dropped him with a short right. He was getting hit too, but he was holding up, and he was putting Moraga down every time he touched him with something big, won the fight on the scorecards. He did take Moraga down early in that matchup. He landed 7 takedowns over his last 4 wins. He's not going to have that option here against a former Olympic wrestler. Sorry, kid, it's not happening. He was, on the flip side, he was taken down by Moraga on a couple of occasions. He went for a guillotine, went for a choke in that fight, which was a mistake. He lost the position. He will attack off his back, but that's an issue. If you're willing to attack off your back and you can't get a submission, and you're probably not going to submit Henry Cejudo on the mat unless you catch him in a ridiculous position, you're going to be at a deficit eventually. When he fought Brandon Moreno in his last fight, he won the fight. I predicted him to win it. It was a good fight, but he gave up 4 takedowns. He got out of those rounds, but again, over 5 rounds. If you give up 4 takedowns against Henry Cejudo, you're probably losing that matchup. The thing is, you notice once Moreno and once Moraga as well established the takedown game, established the threat of the wrestling, we saw Pettis start to drop his hands, and that opened up striking opportunities, and I fully anticipate something like that happening here. Moraga scored takedowns in the 3rd round, and Pettis has given up at least 1 takedown in 8 of his last 9 fights. So it's worth stating he can be put on the floor. Additionally, Pettis has some issues with finishing strong. He tends to fade a little bit. His output tends to drop off in the 3rd round. He's simply not the same fighter. Now, Cejudo, he's recently changed camps. He actually did it heading into the Benavidez fight, and you can see it usually takes 1 or 2 matchups before you see that change in camp start to affect their in-cage performance. That certainly was the case against Wilson Hayes. He looked very good with his striking offense in that matchup. He looked more aggressive, more urgent. His striking looked improved. His timing and technique looked better. He rocked Benavidez with the left hook early in that matchup. He throws a nice heavy straight right. He'll counter with it as well. He dropped Wilson Hayes with that straight right. Just overall, his hands look quicker. He looks like he has more power when he's throwing his offense. He's got some very good body kicks. He was busting at Benavidez to the body. He will go low, and look for him to lock up a tie plumb in close and land some knee strikes. Again, he's an athlete who's been to the top of the mountain in a sport. He knows what he has to do to get there again and to improve every other aspect of his offense. If he does look for wrestling, look for him to use those trip takedowns. He's got a variety of takedowns. He got on top of Benavidez, a single leg and trip. He had 6 takedowns against Chris Carriasso, but he's landed just 7 takedowns combined over his other 6 fights. So again, he's not a type of guy who's gone out and just wrestled guys and put them down. He wants to work on his striking. He wants to win fights on the basis of that. I still think he's going to have success with his wrestling when he wants to have success with his wrestling. Some of the knocks on Cejudo going into the Hayes fight was that he throws too much power in his offense, and when he swings and misses, it takes it out of him. I thought he tightened things up significantly in that fight. He was landing more strikes. He was conserving more, still being effective, and I think that's a sign of the changes in the camp he's made. I think, he has used his wrestling in the past with success. He's going to augment his striking with a takedown or 2 here against Sergio Pettis to keep him guessing, to open up those holes I mentioned by making Pettis drop his hands to defend the takedowns. Pettis not a strong finisher. Cejudo might slow down a little bit either way. I think Cejudo gets ahead early on, and my prediction is Henry Cejudo to defeat Sergio Pettis by decision. Oh boy, put the kids to bed, because this fight's bringing all the violence. We move to the UFC's heavyweight division for the co-main event of the evening, as the number one ranked fighter in the division, the Demolition Man Alistair Overeem, currently holding a record of 43 wins, 15 losses, and 1 no contest, takes on the fourth ranked fighter in the division, Francis the Predator Ngannou, fighting out of Cameroon with a record of 10 wins and just a single defeat. Now, the winner is on the cusp of a title shot here. Overeem might need another victory, even though he's coming up a win over Felice over Doom. He might need another victory to get a shot at Stipe, since he was stopped by Stipe not that long ago. For Ngannou, though, if he beats Overeem, I would think he gets the opportunity to fight for the title next. You know, Overeem's rebounded nicely, though, from the Stipe loss. He knocked out Mark Hunt. He had a decision victory over Felice over Doom. He's looked decent. Ngannou 5-0 in the UFC. He's showed solid progression through each of his opponents. He's actually finished. He's finishing them all, but he's finished the more recent opponents, the more talented guys like Andrei Arlovski, quicker than he did against the early guys in his UFC run. So he's making impressive progress. Physically, both men are huge. Overeem tends to look like he's slimming down a little bit. He's not. He's losing some of that bulk. And again, some people raise questions as to why that's going on. Let's not get into it. Could he go back to light heavyweight? Probably not, but you never know. Both men 6'4". Overeem should come in 10 to 15 pounds heavier, but again, that's the old Overeem. I wouldn't be surprised if they're close to even. If not, he could be a little bit lighter. 3-inch reach advantage for Francis, and he'll be the younger man by 6 years. Now, Ngannou, that guy hits hard. There's footage of him in the media out there setting the record for the hardest punch. I don't doubt it. The guy's a monster. He moves very well. He's got some grappling experience outside of mixed martial arts, so he's fairly well-rounded. He throws a big right hand. He can be a little bit wild with it at times, but again, that technique will come and improve over time. He throws a nice left hook in combination with that right, long left uppercut as well. He's got a number of nice striking techniques. He can counter strike as well. He looked for that straight left to counter any low kicks that Overeem throws his way. When he took it on Arlovski, it was a beautiful two-punch combination. He threw consecutively 2 in a row, boom, 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 and caught Arlovski and put him down. Again, that uppercut he worked against the cage against Luis Henrique, very impressive. When he fought Bojan Mihailovic, he cut off the cage. Didn't really throw himself out there as far as aggressive punching and aggressive striking, but he cut off the cage and eventually swarmed and unloaded him for the finish. But he didn't open up until he saw that opportunity. He's a very patient fighter. He shows good fakes and feints early on. He waits for his openings, doesn't punch himself out. It's a sign of a guy who really thinks things through, has a high fight IQ. The big thing with Ngannou, which catches guys off, he has a lightning fast first step. He almost glides when he takes that first step, and he closes the distance very well, which when you combine his size, power, and speed, and fighters look and say, okay, he's over there, I've got some time before he steps, boom, he's on top and he's landing strikes. Watch for that in this matchup, especially against Overeem, who looks to keep that tight defensive front. Once they are on the inside, Ngannou can land some very hard knees to the body and the head, and he gets on top. He's got that big ground and pound, which makes it next to impossible for you to defend against and get back up and not get stopped via even TKO. He has had success shutting down takedowns or getting back up from them. I don't know if we're going to see Overeem shoot, but he has caught us off guard with those before. Just overall, he has an impressive combination of strength and technique to out-muscle guys, out-technique guys, and just be flat-out better than his opposition. The guy is scary. Now, Alistair Overeem, no slouch, multi-time world champion, K1 champion, very impressive UFC title challenger. He's been using more and more strategy over his recent success. More calculated. It was working against Ben Rothwell until Rothwell kind of stepped forward and cracked him. We saw it work against Travis Brown and Bigfoot to an extent, and then of course they had their moments and hurt him as well. But more recently, he's been having more and more success. He makes himself very hard to hit. He keeps his hands up to kind of catch punches and parry them out of the way. But he does get in trouble when his opponents back him up against the cage. Arlovski backed him up and hurt him and had him in trouble. Stipe had him in trouble there. Roy Nelson even had him in some trouble backing him up and landing a big shot and hurting him. We have seen, Overeem have a lot of success controlling opponents along the cage in that clinch. That could be one of his best positions. The knees he can land is brutal because he's so physically strong to control you and then he'll turn those knees over and break you down. He finished Mark Hunt from that position. If he can control Ngannou in the cage and stuff him up against the wall, he can do a heck of a lot of damage in that spot there. He has power in almost everything he throws. He knocked out Arlovski, he knocked out Hunt, he knocked out Junior Dos Santos, he dropped Stipe. If he connects, you are in serious trouble. The big thing, though, with Alistair is to be successful, he needs to make his opponents hesitate. He needs to make them second-guess themselves, sit on the outside, look tentative like Junior Dos Santos was, not push forward, let him land his strikes, and at the same time not get hit. He can counter-strike or he can push forward, but when he feels comfortable. Ngannou, he is aggressive, but at the same time, he's a patient form of aggression. He will engage. He needs to avoid overswinging and getting cracked with a counter strike. But I think he's going to be the more physical man in close, which is going to surprise some people. I think it's a rare thing for Alistair Overeem to be manhandled. I think Francis Ngannou is certainly capable of that. But I think ultimately Ngannou is going to push forward. He's going to keep Overeem backing up. He's not going to allow him to establish that difficult defensive front. Eventually he's going to catch him. And maybe it comes along the cage when Overeem tries to shell up and defend. But my prediction is Francis Ngannou to defeat Alistair Overeem by knockout. And finally, it's time for the UFC 218 main event. It's a rematch that we really haven't been waiting for that long, simply because it was thrown together. But nonetheless, we are in the UFC's featherweight division. It's the newly crowned Max Blessed Holloway, the champion of the division with a record of 18 wins and 3 losses, takes on the former champion, the number 1 ranked Jose Aldo, currently holding a record of 26 wins and 3 defeats. Now, Aldo is stepping in to replace Frankie Edgar with just over 2 weeks to prep for this opportunity. It's a rematch from the UFC 212 bout in which Aldo was the champ, Holloway was the interim champ, and Holloway got the job done. Holloway, a loss for Aldo here would make him 0-2 versus the champion. So he's taking a hell of a risk stepping in here, knowing that if he loses this bout, he is pretty much done in this division until a new champion's crowned or something crazy happens. Holloway has won 11 fights in a row coming into this matchup, dating back to 2013. The last loss, of course, a loss to Conor McGregor. This is his first title defense, so it's a big opportunity for him to solidify himself as the champion. Aldo had won 18 consecutive bouts prior to losing to Conor McGregor, which included 2 WEC title defenses, 6 UFC title defenses. He won the interim title from Frankie Edgar in a rematch there. He has lost 2 of his last 3, though, unfortunately. For Max Holloway, he is 4 inches taller. Aldo will have a 1-inch reach advantage. Max is the younger fighter by 5 years. And it's worth noting as well, Aldo 2-0 in rematches, having defeated both Chad Mendes and Frankie Edgar in rematches, but those fights were also preluded? That makes sense? Followed by successful fights by Aldo. So he came into those matchups with a win already. Here he's coming with a loss, looking to rebound and get back to 1-1. Now, how does Aldo fare on short notice? That's the first big question we got to talk about. He was prepping for a fight a couple weeks down the road with Ricardo Lamas, another rematch. But how will he be ready for this matchup with just a couple weeks, not peaking when he was anticipating peaking? He's got to do it a little bit quicker. Is his focus there? Is his cardio there? We got to wonder, and that's a big question mark. Now, we're going to go back and look at that first matchup. And statistically, here's how it played out. Holloway landed 104 significant strikes. Jose Aldo landed 55. No takedowns on either side. Now, it's worth noting those numbers are a little bit skewed because Aldo landed, I think, 7 more significant strikes in round 1. It was almost even in round 2. I think Aldo landed 1 more significant strike. But Holloway, he piled the numbers up simply because when he got the knockdown, he got on top. He landed a hell of a lot of ground and pound before this fight was eventually stopped. They gave Aldo every chance to get out of there. So that's why the numbers are significantly skewed in Holloway's favor. And he won the fight, but they're not a true story of how the fight went start to finish. Now, as far as how the action actually went, it was a very patient, very methodical start. Both were circling and jabbing away. Jose was the first to actually open up and push forward and engage. Max came out aggressive in round 2, and Aldo, though, was having a lot of success moving back to avoid Holloway's big shots and simply not taking a lot of damage. Max was landing a decent right hand at times. He was using that space, though, at the same time, the space he was able to create to limit what Aldo was doing. So, again, both guys, it was a very good fight, very good chess match between 2 very capable and talented strikers. Max then started to open up. He started to taunt Aldo at the end of round 2, forcing him to open up and push. Both men were landing strikes, and I think Holloway felt he was more durable and he could survive where Aldo might not have been able to. When you look at round 3, when you look at the fighters, Max still up on his toes, bouncing around. Aldo comes out flat. Max was still very live. Aldo was certainly slowing down. And that's been the knock on Aldo. What happens when he gets into the later stages of a matchup? Is he the same fighter? Max didn't push him like Frankie Edgar did, but it still had the same effect. And you have to wonder on short notice, could we see something similar, especially with Holloway's confidence up, knowing that he's already stopped this guy once. Ultimately, what did it was a pair of 1-2 combinations that we saw Max Holloway drop Aldo with. He followed him to the mat and landed a prolonged period of ground and pound, did a lot of damage. And again, it's unfortunate to see him take that damage, but at the same time, it's that thing that they give the champion every chance to recover and get out of there before they take his title belt away. And I think it was a just stoppage. Probably, it wasn't too late, but it was just long enough. Now, again, I said the perceived way to beat Aldo is to push him early, tire him out, and compromise his gas tank, and either finish him as Holloway did, or win a decision on the strength of your late fight success. Max Successless did that, and I don't think he did it as good as he could have, and that's worth noting. Aldo's been hit a lot more of late. Conor McGregor obviously knocking him out. The Holloway loss, the Mendes 2 fight, Frankie Edgar hit him a lot in the first matchup at least. That damage could be piling up. He's been fighting the elite of the elite for a long time, and you have to wonder at some point that catches up to him, and it appears it might have caught up to him here. Max Holloway buzzed him, hurt him, finished him without really opening up and exposing himself too much. He didn't get too aggressive with striking. He kept his offense fairly concise, fairly controlled, and eventually found the mark and put him down. There's an opportunity here for Jose Aldo that Nova União Wrestling. Could he opt to try and take Holloway down and completely change his approach? It's a possibility. Max's takedown defense has been excellent, and Aldo, if he goes for those early takedowns, goes out of his comfort zone, it could tire him out, and 5 rounds is a long way to fight against a guy like Max Holloway when you're gassed early on. Aldo hasn't landed hardly any leg kicks in that fight. He's got away from that. I don't know if it's because he's hurt his feet in the past, if it's just something he's not throwing. He landed 1 against Max Holloway overall. That's something he could look to. I think that would be more likely to see them say, come out and kick those legs. Take away Max's mobility. Take away some of his cardio by hurting him with his lower half. Take away his base. Hurt him. Does Max need to change anything coming to this matchup? Is it an issue if he doesn't adapt? Does he need to adapt? These are all big questions. That's the thing. The champion won the fight because of what he did. Can that approach work here? Does he need to change? Does Jose Aldo make any changes? If he does, how does Max Holloway prepare for that? Because he doesn't know what he's going to do differently. I think Max just needs to come out and fight his fight and see what happens. As I said, most of Holloway's volume came after Aldo was hurt, but as he got more confident, he started to open up, he started to attack. I think we could see him do that here and push him harder and push him earlier in this fight, land more strikes, and really say to Aldo, look, if you're going to stick with me, you're going to have to do it on my terms. Long first fights are usually followed by a quick rematch. We've kind of established that with some of my bet packs. You've seen some of the trends there. Similar to the Mendes-Aldo matchup, though, is what we got here. A very abrupt end of the first matchup. Of course, the first one wasn't abrupt here, but still a finish inside the first half of the fight. We could see this fight go much longer, but the guys come out, they know each other a little bit better. Maybe Aldo's a little more tentative, not willing to push and open up and make some mistakes he did in the first fight. There's pressure on both sides here, but Max, I think he's in a better place overall. Everyone has their time, even the greatest of champions, and I think Jose Aldo's found it. He's found a fighter who is simply offering a skill set that gives him too much trouble at a point in his career where he's not able to recover and succeed. I predicted Max Holloway in the first fight to win by TKO, which he did. My prediction here is Max Holloway to defeat Jose Aldo. I'm going to take Holloway this time by decision. So those are some of my predictions for the Ultimate Fighter finale and all of my main card predictions for the UFC 218 event. Any other fight that's on the card, I will do my best. They're going to be brief, people, very brief, but they'll be posted at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I'm going to be busting my balls to get the bet packs up as quickly as I possibly can before Friday and before Saturday. So please bear with me. Please be patient if you are a customer. If you have any questions or concerns or issues, certainly feel free to email me. You can follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. I do my best to stay active on there, but it's very difficult because it just seems like it's going nonstop. And then the first time I get to actually rest from doing all the breakdowns and predictions and work is on fight night. So I want to sit back and enjoy the fights. So, hey, I'll do the best I can. I always appreciate when you tune in and listen. It's always a good time. Thank you very much. And I'll see you back here next time. Hi.